In the ancient world, city walls were pretty important. If you had a city without walls, it was essentially like having a house without a front door. You're just kind of inviting disaster and destruction. You're open to invading armies and all sorts of vulnerabilities. And this is the situation that the Israelites faced as they returned to Jerusalem, the city that had been razed to the ground essentially 130 years earlier by the king of Babylon. King Nebuchadnezzar came in, his army pillaged and they plundered, they scorched the temple, they really just destroyed and burned to ashes all of the homes that were there. They killed young men and women indiscriminately. They broke down the walls around Jerusalem. The Babylonians razed the holy city to the ground. Now the exiles have to go in, they have to build it up again. A lot of weeds can grow up over the course of 130 years. Now this tearing down and building up, this is a picture of what God is always doing in our hearts too. He's destroying old idols, he's pulling up weeds, he's knocking down the walls we erect around our own safe little comfort zones. There's a destruction that has to happen before reconstruction can take place. And sometimes this process hurts like a lot. I don't know if you've noticed this, but living the victorious Christian life doesn't feel very victorious sometimes, does it? It feels like more being under the hot knife of the great physician as he performs spiritual heart surgery again and again and again. But this destructive cutting work that he does, it's ultimately for our benefit, it's for our healing. God has something much better in mind than these tiny little things that we construct with our own two hands and say, wow, isn't that impressive? Look what I built, aren't I hot stuff? In response, God takes out his divine wrecking ball and he smashes our own little kingdoms to pieces in order that he can expand his kingdom. This is why in the Lord's Prayer, we don't pray, my kingdom come, we pray, thy kingdom come, right? God is always leading us back from exile, always tearing down and reconstructing in our hearts. In his infinite wisdom, he sometimes allows us to bottom out, to experience the consequences in full of our own sin. He allows us to root around in the rubble of our own smashed hopes and dreams until we discover that, man, we do not have the strength to build them back up on our own. We need some help from outside. We need help from someone outside ourselves. And that's when Jesus steps in. Isaiah 58:12 says this, your people will rebuild the ancient ruins and will raise up the age-old foundations. You will be called repairer of broken walls, restorer of streets with dwellings. God is called the repairer of broken walls, the restorer of streets with dwellings. Now, what walls are broken in your hearts today? What do you need him to restore? The good news is that to people burdened and weary and worn out by their own sins, God doesn't give advice. He doesn't say, look, try harder or push more or be stronger. Instead, he issues the same invitation he issues every single day, which is, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. In other words, lay aside your own rebuilding projects and instead rest in the finished work of Christ.